Curriculum Committee. Happy New Year, and welcome to my fellow board member Rachel, our liaison Dr. Feeney, our superintendent Dr. Posse, the community, those at home that are watching. Thank you for joining us. We're looking forward to a conversation about acceleration and enrichment across the K-12 schools. And I turn it over to Dr. Feeney. Oh, I'm sorry, Sandra Alvarez, another committee member, will be here shortly.
Excellent. Thank you. We are excited to give an overview of our both philosophy as well as our approach to acceleration and enrichment in our three different levels: elementary, middle school, and high school. Switch over to the presentation. And we'll start just by setting up the presentation. What we're looking to do in this presentation: clarify how acceleration and enrichment function together across grade levels. We want to highlight the opportunities that exist, address questions about the demand and access, particularly in the humanities, which is where a lot of questions have been raised about our acceleration and enrichment, and then talk about some of our current practices within a coherent K-12 framework. So it's important just to, of course, define the terms. So we've got a common language. Acceleration refers to students engaging with content earlier and or at a faster pace. This is most common in disciplines that have very clearly sequenced skills, such as the Regents coursework we do in the middle school, honors, AP, dual enrollment courses at the high school. That's some of where we have some acceleration. Enrichment is when students engage with greater depth, greater complexity, and sometimes application. Enrichment is often focused on thinking, creativity, transferring the learning. We've got examples of some of the enrichment in our district, our PEP program. We have some project-based learning and our senior experience. So keep those definitions and that difference between the acceleration and the enrichment as we go through the presentation. So at the elementary school, enrichment serves as the foundation. All of our elementary students receive enrichment. Our PEP program, the Port Enrichment Program, our PEP program provides whole class enrichment for all students, K through 5, at the elementary school level. And we also have targeted core group opportunities for students who have been identified. Those students receive a pull-out program. But from an enrichment point of view, all of our students are getting some sort of instruction, typically problem solving, inquiry, creativity, collaboration, communication. Back in March of 2023, we did a presentation that highlights the PEP program. That presentation, it's clickable here, and it's still available on our website. But at the elementary level, in class, in school, everyone's receiving that as some enrichment. We get to the middle school, PEP does continue for enrichment in grade 6. They have our core group, but there's also open lunchtime enrichment opportunities for all students. That open lunchtime enrichment does include math Olympiads. Middle school is where we do have acceleration in certain areas. We have accelerated art classes. We have Regents coursework in mathematics and science. And there is a path for double math acceleration for a small group of students. We do use some digital tools such as MyPath and IXL to extend or reinforce some learning within our heterogeneous classes without needing to change any course placement. The middle school acceleration, we've spoken about this in past presentations. This is our Algebra 1 acceleration. You've got within this chart you've got I didn't even bother putting the passing rate because the mastery rate has been 100%. All students getting at least an 85 on that exam. The participation rate went from, that's the line graph that's superimposed on that, went from 27%, 37% of 8th graders, 36% of 8th graders taking that algebra. Participation rate has gone up. That has been one of the initiatives we've spoken of in previous presentations. It's something, one of our goals, and we're working on increasing it. For the 25-26 school year, participation rate has been flat. It's at 36% for the algebra. Clearly, we don't know what our passing rate quite is, but even as participation went up by 10 percentage points, the mastery rate has remained at 100%. So you can increase access while still having a outstanding mastery rate in this case. The other region's course is Earth Science, which shifted to last year Earth and Space Sciences, so a different, more demanding curriculum. You see a participation rate from 37 to 40. It dipped last year to 32. Has gone back up to 39. Once again, last year, more challenging course, more challenging curriculum, more challenging examination. This is still the mastery rate. Everyone passed the exam, but the mastery rate did dip last year to 62%, which was well above, as we saw in the data presentation, state and county averages. We were not, we were in our area one of the handful of districts that took on the new, more challenging course last year. Many waited till this year before they need to, and clearly we're waiting to see what the overall passing mastery rate will be in June. We have art acceleration, as mentioned. You can accelerate in the visual arts at the middle school with a course called Accelerated Art. That gives you half a credit of high school elective credit. Typically we get, upwards of 50 students in that course. That's been pretty consistent. Studio and art, that's an actual high school art credit. You get 1.0. The first one, Accelerated Art, that's elective credit. The second one is one of the required art credits in high school. We get a couple dozen students taking that regularly. Beyond that sort of acceleration, there is some enrichment. We've done a number of presentations over the years about core extension. Core extension is a scheduled in-course, in-school enrichment experience available to most every student. That does focus on interdisciplinary learning, higher order thinking, emphasizes skills usually connected to the humanities and science. And kids have an opportunity, students have an opportunity to do projects that would not typically get done in a regular classroom. So there is a lot of enrichment. There have been discussion over the years about the consistency of that as an enrichment model. I think the middle school has improved it, done well to enhance it and provide a little more consistency, and continue to pay attention to that. We get to the high school, the most common acceleration, of course, is the advanced placement course sequence. Schreiber has 33 AP courses, and the opportunity to take AP courses expands as grade level goes up. They have 7 courses available for 10th graders, 12 available for 11th graders, 27 available for 12th graders. Upcoming for the 26-27 years, we announced in last month's presentation, will be an AP seminar course, which we will have available for to our 9th graders. Very high participation, growing participation for last year, May of 2025. And once again, in the previous ones, you see the graphs where the participation and the outcomes have both increased. 775 students, 1951 AP exams administered, 77% of the class took at least one AP, average score of 4.72. 90% of the students scored at least a 3 or higher on at least one of their exams last year. 88% overall passing rate, and 393 record number of AP scholars in 2025. Once again, as we saw with the middle school Regents courses, you have an example of expanded access, expanded opportunities without, in this case, actually increased and improved outcomes at the high school level with the AP offerings, both in terms of participation and the passing rates for these exams. Schreiber also has dual enrollment. There are 21 dual enrollment courses. These are courses that allow students to earn college courses, college credit while enrolled in high school. They're typically offered, well, they are always offered in partnership with some higher education, usually a local one, whether it's St. John's, Malloy, whatever it might be. They're credit-bearing coursework. This credit-bearing coursework expands access to college-level expectations, authentic academic experiences, and post-secondary pathways, beyond or outside of the AP pathway. A lot of parents, a lot of students really like these because you're guaranteed those credits you earn, assuming you pass the course. You get a transcript that says your child has earned these credits. Whereas with AP, you don't always get the college credit if you pass the exam. It really depends on what the score is and what the college's policies and practices are. At the high school level, we also have both applied and experiential enrichment. We had, in March of last year, we had a great presentation on our senior experience program, which I think is a great illustration of the enrichment that we have for all of our seniors. They can pursue internships, community service, career-focused projects. Emphasize helping kids build greater independence, letting them see the real-world application of their learning and what they're doing at the high school. As we saw in that presentation, which is once again available on our website still, aligned very tightly with our portrait of the graduate.
That was a great presentation.
We've had many great presentations in this committee.
That's true.
So, really looking at, plugging the committee, we're looking at a K-12 continuum of challenge from elementary enrichment, middle school enrichment that does have opportunities for selective acceleration, and high school where we're both accelerating and enriching, full throttle, if you will. So an important part of our enrichment experience across the district are the co-curricular programs. A lot of these co-curricular programs, we're able to provide them. I think it's important to recognize, thanks to our partners in Hearts and the Ed Foundation, that provide a lot of these programs, both the clubs as well as sort of our arts and education residencies. So at the elementary level, there is just a wide array. If I were to list it, would take up slides and slides of the different activities. Each school, there's some common ones, but each school brings sometimes its own unique partnerships. The middle school has 22 academic clubs and competitions that are available to all students. We have enrichment activities tied to humanities, to STEM, to the arts. At the high school, it's a smorgasbord of clubs and organizations, categorized by honor societies. There are competition-based clubs, service-oriented clubs, and we have student interest clubs as well. All these clubs at all levels help support leadership development, collaboration, communication, civic engagement, as well as identity exploration and belonging, figuring out who you are, what you like, what interests you. So let's put this in context, do a little bit of comparison. Every district is unique, and I think that's important, but just to get sort of an overview, recently did a survey, got responses from 20 Nassau County districts. You know, the middle school model of acceleration with math and science, that's very common across districts. In terms of humanities acceleration, varies widely across districts, not common at all at the middle school. The enrichment models are far more common than any formal honors pathway, both in ELA as well as social studies. There is no single dominant regional model. Not every school district does this or that, or so on and so forth. This notion of formal labeled honors tracks in middle school humanities, far less common and not at all standardized. Pardon me?
So we're still gonna ask about it.
Yeah, no, that's fine, but, you know, it just, and I asked other districts about it, right? You know, we have our views, our belief, what we think is rooted in best practices, let's see what other districts are doing.
It's definitely good to have.
So, the humanities focus, we have to talk about it, right? Elephant, I didn't even put an elephant on the slide, right? Because that's what's come up. So a common question from the community has been, hey, why are there fewer honors or accelerated options in the humanities? Particularly, you know, it's really middle school, grade 9, and when you compare this to STEM, right? So this question usually arises from a genuine desire to, hey, my child is not being challenged in, you know, humanities. How can we make sure that they are challenged? They're challenged fine in math, science. Why the difference? You know, and I think that's the sort of background to that question. So I really should have put an elephant on this, but let's get it out there. So, you know, we've had these conversations, and they've been part of discussions when we've talked about, and I see Dr. Bear is here, when we've talked about, you know, what's happening in grade 9, just the notion of what intellectual depth looks like in the humanities. Typically in those humanities disciplines, well, how do you arrive at challenge? It's less about pace, it's more about, you know, the intellectual depth, the analytical thinking, you know, the quality of writing, and having that strong humanities instruction. You need heterogeneous discussions, you want shared texts, you want shared experiences, you want to make sure that your students are developing a common and a strong academic language over time. When you look at an acceleration model for humanities, that alone doesn't always strengthen these outcomes. And those have been outcomes that, you know, clearly they're important to all of us. Grade 9 is a foundation year. I think in different presentations, Dr. Bear has spoken very eloquently about that grade 9, where you are getting some common expectations for analytical reading, evidence-based writing, and historical and civic thinking. So having those shared experiences certainly supports equity, helps build a strong academic foundation, and most importantly, it's preparing all students for both the AP offerings as well as sort of the upper level electives we have. In our discussions, both at board meetings and in community presentations, we've made it clear this is intentional. You know, having that grade 9 humanities be common and heterogeneous because of the nature of the humanities courses. We have humanities enrichment certainly at the high school. People know that, worth mentioning at the middle school and the high school, worth mentioning, from the PEP core group to open enrichment opportunities, project-based learning embedded in courses. At the high school, we have lots of humanities focused electives, research, discussion-based courses. Senior experience, seal of biliteracy, seal of civic readiness, that's all enrichment, not acceleration. Could we do more? Without a doubt. I think that at all levels, we are trying to work on our instructional approach, provide more consistent instructional approach that reaches more students and provides as much differentiation as possible. Some of the things we are and need to continue exploring in the humanities areas, things like seminar-style units within existing courses, that provides a level of enrichment and challenge for kids. We can have short-term labs within the humanities courses, interdisciplinary projects, which we have at the middle school, but not in a consistent manner across all of the houses. Research, debate, civic and debate engagement strands, we're working to infuse research more consistently across all levels. These sort of approaches to enrichment will help increase the challenge without having the early tracking that we are trying to avoid. So just looking ahead to 26, 27, mentioned the AP seminar course, which for most districts, that's really a 10-12 course. We are opening it up for ninth graders next year. This is a course that emphasizes research, evidence-based argumentation, writing, and presentation. So you're getting this humanities-based AP pathway in a course that actually emphasizes depth over pace. This is one of my favorite AP courses in giving students this shared foundational experience, in this case, especially involving research, and it's providing access without any sort of tracking. We're also going to be exploring the addition of a second AP course offering for ninth grade next year. Not next year, we'll be exploring it next year for possible implementation during the 27-28 school year. AP Human Geography, which is a very approachable AP course for students who want a challenge in the ninth grade or beyond. That can be given to students 9 through 12. We are trying to be thoughtful. We are trying to avoid early labeling, preserve rich, diverse classroom discussions. We want to ensure access to strong humanities instruction for all of our students. And we want to align an appropriate challenge with depth thinking, communication. Having honors coursework is one way to provide challenge. It's not the only way, and it's not necessarily the best way either. Having enrichment, applied learning, acceleration at appropriate points, and as we tried to highlight last month, multiple on-ramps to advanced coursework. Kids are ready for advanced coursework sometimes at different points in their lives, and we want to make sure that we can get them on that ramp, not just at the middle school or in 8th grade, but in 9th grade and 10th grade, depending on when their light bulb goes off. Acceleration, enrichment, they're not isolated programs. We have a coordinated K-12 system that we want to design to challenge all of our students, to respect their interests and prepare all of our graduates for a very complex world. Honors classes are not, they're just one path, but they're not the only path. And what we're looking for is to make sure we have students being provided with long-term opportunity over sort of this short-term sorting. And that's it. That's sort of an overview of the two sides, the acceleration and the enrichment K-12.
Wow, that's a record.
Listen, could we have gone? Yes. You could go list every single club, all the different courses, slide. This I thought really was a broader sort of 30,000-foot picture of what's going on in the district. You know, even at the high school, I don't think anyone needs to be convinced that we have lots of enrichment and acceleration, you know, at the high school with the AP presentations that have been given to talk about those things, but, you know, trying to fit it all in and see where we are sort of at a high level. You know, we can address any more details in the Q&A if you'd like.
Thank you. Well, that was definitely a 30,000-foot look. It's helpful to see it in that context. Thank you for this, and as I usually do, I will pass it to my two welcomes to our two committee members.
You want to start by asking for the data?
I'll go quick. I only have two questions. So this was asked in the data presentation in the fall and possibly last year. I can't recall, but and I didn't see it. I know I came late, but I hit the part where we hit the secondary level, but the drop rate. So I didn't see any information yet on the drop rate for the AP courses.
No.
Do you know when that would be available?
We can do that as part of our data presentation. This was not getting into, once again, looking to do a 30,000-foot discussion, not talking about the, you know, what level kids are dropping out of AP classes.
It showed the participation rate, so I just
Correct.
thought maybe it would be a good time to show the drop rate as well.
For AP classes or for?
You showed participation, I think, for Weber. I was
no,
driving in.
It was only
that's when
Weber, I only
okay.
showed participation. We did a presentation, I wanted to show how the participation rate has increased at Weber. But my question to you, you're looking for the drop rate for both the regents at the middle school as well as the AP?
No, that was just, you had data here, so I thought that would just be another data point to show, only because we already discussed asking about that. So do you know, like, which presentation it would be part of, or maybe just sent updated in a packet? It just, because it was already asked before, so.
We can get the information for this year.
But you want it for?
The specific question we asked was in the secondary, was high school APs. Was this notion that some students, and without seeing the data, this is all anecdotal, right? That some students drop quickly, some first quarter on some courses. So I think that we had originally asked on seeing what that breakdown looks like, not just a generic number of 10 kids dropped, because it's, I think, significant if it's 10 kids dropped in one course. So I think that was the original question in the fall.
So we can look at the original enrollment for the class in terms of like the first day of school enrollment versus the end of the first quarter, and tell you how many kids remained by course.
Yeah, or settle it maybe 2 weeks in or a week in where, you know, once they have that and then beyond.
Because what is the drop time frame?
I was gonna say,
Because I remember I
late.
dropped AP American History, so I know this.
I dropped physics.
There you go. I think, so, and I think it was after the first exam. So what is the timeline? December 1st. You can take like 2 tests at that point.
Yeah,
So I
that's
thi-
second quarter.
Yeah, so I think that that's really the significant discussion that we had in the fall, was not necessarily scheduling issues, right? So I think like maybe the first week before an exam even occurs,
Doesn't help
from the scary whatever, you know, speech on first day, but it really, I think it was the discussion of what does the course load look like in those first couple of weeks. Right, am I mistaken on like
No,
what
you're
the
right.
original
And so-
discussion was?
I'm trying to think through in my head, what's the most meaningful piece
Data.
of information then? Is it like how many have dropped by the time they could drop? Or how many are dropping after the first test? Or like,
Yeah.
I don't.
Whatever you
what
think
are you-
it
What
might
are you
be.
looking for?
It would be hard to do it because we don't know when the first test might be.
Right.
We can compare, you know, enrollment, let's say mid-September when things settle.
Right,
And
right.
you're at the beginning and by the beginning of the second semester, for example.
Yeah, and just to answer like what we're looking for, I think it's hard without the district showing us information. So like this is all anecdotal, I think, for us to hear about classes, but without seeing anything. It could be, you know, one kid dropping, and it was me, whatever, many years ago, yeah.
I think it's a valuable piece of information. I'm trying to figure out in my head, like when I said, what are we looking for? What I'm trying to figure out is like, what will we be able to know from the data,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm assuming at the beginning, some of it is schedule rejiggering. Maybe a spot opened up in a class, the child wanted more, so they switched and they moved
And
something.
that happens in the
was, like,
first few
drawn.
weeks.
Yeah, so I think that's what you're saying, it's like if we do it.
Mid-September, and then look at where we are at the beginning of the second semester.
What's helpful to just keep in mind as we look at that is that the trend is still in the very positive direction. You know, in the acceleration and participation outcomes, on that slide, Dr. Feeney talks about the fact that 77% of the graduating seniors took at least one AP course. 1,951 AP exams were administered. So yeah, there might, you know, as we open doors for students, what that might mean is that some students may push themselves into courses and then determine that their balance is off in terms of their out-of-school commitments and things of that nature. So in terms of, you would ask, like, what's the administration looking at? We're looking at the overall trend in terms of, you know, we have 77% of our graduating seniors taking at least one AP course. We'd love to see all college-bound students taking at least one AP course before they graduate high school. So the question is, what kind of opportunities can we provide? And because our enrollment process is the way that it is, where we're encouraging kids to take these courses, you may see drops.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because that means that kids are making decisions based on the totality of their life.
But
And
It's a
probably
question of
better.
patterns, I think, right?
right,
Yeah.
but to your point, if in our, let's say, AP English course, you know, there are 30 kids dropping, that would be cause for alarm.
Yeah.
Just
And that's
for the
not the
crowd,
case,
Dr.
but
Bear
if it were.
shaking her head in the back, but
No, they
that's not
don't. We don't have, of course it's not happening.
So
Yeah.
it's an easy data point to share then.
Correct, we'll find it for you, yeah.
My only, I don't know if it's a question, I know you guys do a great job discussing humanities. So my only like confusion on one of the slides, and I'm trying to find the slide again, when you discuss the humanities, right, in expanding humanities enrichment thoughtfully, it's the slide before. So why grade 9 is a foundation year,
What's the slide number you're looking at?
22? Nope, 21, understanding intellectual depth.
Yeah.
Okay, so my only, you know, with this, the only thing I saw from 21 was like, yeah, of course, and we should expose them younger for this reason, right? So that's where I think the humanities discussion comes up a lot, that I've seen from other board members, and then I'm trying to understand myself, is this concept of why not then? Why not add something sooner? So I see this slide, and I think you used it for the nature of showing like there's other ways to expose students, but when you looked at other districts, it wasn't glaring that we were, you know, below or above with the humanity offers, right? It was like, you said it varies across districts with, earlier you said with.
Right, so let me ask, are you talking about acceleration or enrichment?
Both.
Right, so acceleration is not common in the humanities, right? It's
Correct.
common in
All
STEM.
districts
Right, across the districts, it's
yeah.
common in STEM. You know, the math, the science, you know, those are sort of sequential courses, they're credit-based. We want to get students, and we need to, in order for those students who want to, and I'm not saying AP Calculus has to be it, but if you want the option to take AP Calculus in your senior year, you do need to accelerate in math You know, but those are common, the sequential nature of those courses. With the humanities, it's more about depth. So the acceleration is not important. What's important is the enrichment and being able to capture the full range of students, having those heterogeneous discussions. You're able to provide greater intellectual opportunities for students, quite frankly, and you develop that common language. What we need to be able to do and continue to expand is, the enrichment opportunities within those classes, which was, in one of those slides talking about how we can provide better enrichment. Humanities is more about depth of discussion. It's not about sort of sequential credit-based work the way math and science are.
Yeah, and I completely understand that. I think for me is I'm still not understanding why we've made so far a decision to not offer some sort of accelerated option sooner, younger. If other districts, maybe one or two districts are doing it, I don't really care about other districts, but you did the comparison. But for me, I'm still not understanding why not potentially offer it. I understand, why not simultaneously do it while doing the enrichment that you're talking about, exposing the whole class, these heterogeneous conversations within the class. That's where I think I'm still lost of like the why not, which I think we are adding, well, potentially, in the last presentation, we are adding the one AP, the 9 seminar. So like, I think there's that.
And we're looking at one more for the following year, another 9th grade AP option, which would be an elective option for those students that are more humanities focused, that'll give them another course that'll have some depth of rigor for them. The question around sorting and separating students is always, when is too early? When is, locking students into tracks that are hard to change is something that districts need to be very cautious about. And with math and with science, you see that we're trying to recognize that some kids are in the position where they can take these math courses sooner. But what's happened here in Port Washington is that students who develop later have had difficulty getting onto those tracks. So what we're trying to do now is build additional on-ramps. And you saw that in our program enhancement presentation. So the question as it relates to humanities is, when is too early to separate and sort students and essentially lock them into tracks that become more challenging for them to, for them to navigate. Most districts throughout the state do not homogeneously group students in humanities until 9th and 10th grade, until the high school years, and even then it's kind of mixed. So that's why what we're suggesting is in 9th grade offer some of these more in-depth studies, opportunities for kids to study, while still heterogeneously grouping kids in English and social studies in at least 9th grade. In 10th grade, as you know, they can take AP World History or AP European History, which serves as a totally separate course than Global 10. But the prevailing research suggests wait as long as you can to separate kids in terms of in the different tracks, but provide enriching opportunities for kids who demonstrate readiness earlier. This way you don't have the unintended consequences of locking kids into tracks too early and sending the unintended message of who is advanced and who is not advanced when it relates to humanities.
The middle school, I'm so sorry. The middle school acceleration, right? You want to accelerate when pace matters, when you want to get somewhere, and if we want students to have advanced mathematics work such as AP Calculus, we need to accelerate them, whether that's done in 8th grade, starting in prep work in 7th grade, which we described last month, or in one of our future on-ramps. There has to be an acceleration point. That's when pace matters. But pace is not an issue with the humanities, right? There's not a course that that's out there 12th grade that you won't be able to take unless you accelerate. With the humanities, it's the depth that matters, that depth of discussion. And there's a lot of value, as Dr. Posse said, to keeping kids heterogeneous as long as possible. They're already getting separated for those who pull themselves out for math, science to accelerate. Let's keep the rest and provide sort of enriching, robust discussions within a heterogeneous class in the humanities. But I interrupted you.
No, you didn't. You were giving the answer. I appreciate that. I think that my only, concern is what about the students who aren't the STEM-based and who are ready for that next step, who intellectually have that depth
Right.
that you mentioned. And I think like so far what we've seen in Weber is that it's the option is, one of the clubs, right? That enrichment, one of the clubs, but these students do 1,000 things also, right? So there's a debate of the debate of which club, but I think that would be my only concern is, not to talk about me so much, but I did not want to do math accelerated. I did not want to do science accelerated. However, you would have given any sort of research-based type of project or somewhere I can argue, then I would have jumped all over that, right? So those younger ages, that's my, and you've done a great job
You're
explaining
100%
options,
correct,
yeah.
right? You are 100% correct. And in my explanation is an answer to your question, an answer to the why. We can provide what you need through enrichment. We're not where we need to be, and that's what we're working on. One thing I was thinking of, but I didn't include in this presentation, is the addition of a research piece for all sixth graders at the middle school. We have been working on a K-12 research, but there is a research class that is being taught to all sixth graders. That started last year, has continued this year. So adding in and strengthening, improving those enrichment opportunities at the middle school is something we have to do, and we have to continue to work towards, and that's where some of those kids will get that enrichment experience earlier for those who aren't prepared for it. We can't rely solely on clubs. Some of that has to take place in those heterogeneous classes.
Thank you, sorry.
Can I jump in on this topic?
I'm totally done, but yeah.
It's all the same
Oh,
topic.
you're done?
Yeah.
So philosophically,
Yes.
why are we accelerating in art at Weber?
So that, from a point of view with kids who have that art talent, that also, given the range of art classes, for some of them, it does give them a head start if they want to do a sequence and get to some of the APR courses. They can do that preparation, get that credit with the studio in art as an eighth grader and go in, and that gives them a head start. That's an example, although it's not a STEM course, where from a pace point of view, let's get that and you can open up depending on what art track you might want to take.
So, I think you know where I'm going here, right?
No, I have no idea.
Wouldn't, isn't that more analogous to humanities on the pace issue, right? Like art is not a track. You still could be accessing these other art classes, even if you didn't start in 8th grade. But we think that there is a value in them being able to get more in because they have a talent. Isn't that exactly the same for a student who would be talented in the humanities? That I guess I'm challenging the idea that the only time pace matters is if there
Math,
is
science.
a track. And from my perspective, it seems like pace always matters if we want to be challenging a kid as much as they want to be challenged. With the caveat, and I've said this before, but I think that there should always be more challenge available. I think our system is the right one where our gates are flexible and kids can opt in and families can opt in and they can try it, and if it's not right, they can pull out, but we're encouraging the attempt. It seems like it's lower stakes to do that in the humanities when the on-ramps and off-ramps could be literally all the time. So it doesn't, I guess I don't see the harm as much, but just throwing that out there. It seems
appreciate
more
that.
like art. English seems more like art to
Two
me.
things.
Yeah.
Right? So the art is, one class, it's an elective. that students are taking art, you know, at the middle school. When they take it, you know, they're precluded from taking something else. But the difference would be in the humanities, right? Accelerating at a middle school humanities doesn't give you anything. There's nothing that prevents you from taking any of those humanities courses at the high school level coming out of grade 8 sort of social studies or grade 8 English, a robust, rich, heterogeneous class. You know, whereas, as we said with the math, science, you know, you want to be able to, sequential nature of the courses, you need to. The humanities aren't as sequential. With the art, the other aspect I would say is get that credit, get that high school credit in 8th grade. It does allow you, depending on what art you're interested in and what requirements might be, if you're looking to do either a sequence or want to get to what's needed, you know, for your portfolio if you're going to get to the AP art, that does help. Taking an art class in the middle school is also not pulling you out of sort of the heterogeneous, robust discussions that are taking place in the humanities classes. It's a little different.
Katie has a perspective on this too, whenever you're ready.
I do have a very unique background on this topic from both the music and art background as well as the building leadership. So when you talk about that heterogeneous grouping, a lot of that comes into the collaborative nature and the discussions and the conversation. So we have students who are at the very high level of the discussion who are elevating the students who may not be as in-depth, and we have students who are in that middle level who benefit hearing both the ideas from either side and different and unique perspectives. So it elevates the entire discussion to have students who are engaging at different levels. When you talk about art specifically and the nature of accelerating in 8th grade, there's such an individual nature to art. So when you look at the difference between a music class and an art class, music, you're taking all of these individuals and trying to bring them into a collective group to perform and collaborate and do something together. And art, you're planting one seed of an idea, and then instantly students are dispersing, and yes, they can have conversations with each other, but the individualized nature of that work, what we look for in the art field is, my favorite is to look at a whole grouping of projects and see if I can figure out what the topic was, because we don't want cookie cutter, we want everything to be unique. So when you look at, this is where there is some disparity between a humanities discussion-based course and an art-based course, is the individualized nature. So yes, you can have some conversation in the art class, but the crux of the work, what you're really delving into, is so individualized in nature that when you have students who are looking to accelerate and really demonstrate their interest in art at that higher level, they're doing just different projects and they're doing it on their own. So that would be some of the difference in humanities, even though philosophically they tend to get grouped together. And I will tell you, as I'm sorry to my humanities people, I'm a math science kid and a music kid and an art kid. So I was on that side. You can have people who are in the arts who are on that STEM side. It's just a different way to look at it. So that would be the acceleration at the middle school, as opposed to keeping those heterogeneous groupings for a later on-ramp in the humanities.
Yeah, that's a good point in terms of what you see in an art classroom.
I would also add that arts, it's not an academic, so you're getting kids from all different, so we could have kids that are not successful in math, science, English, social studies in an art class because they're talented. So you're hitting a different skill altogether.
So, but can't you have kids in a English class who are talented writers, right? Like, I think.
Absolutely, but I believe that our English teachers could get that out in an English class. Because it's if they're writing, it's an individual assignment. So if they're writing a thesis, that kid that has that talent is writing a stronger thesis than a kid that's maybe writing on an 8th grade level. The skill is still coming out that way.
You know, humanities is often based on prior exposure, background knowledge, outside enrichment, those kinds of, those kinds of things. It's why schools just have to be thoughtful, I think, about when to separate kids. Ideally, what we would do with respect to humanities, in my view, is strengthen the opportunities for kids that show early progress, while trying to avoid the unintended consequences of the labels that are sometimes put on kids in terms of I'm not an advanced kid. And that might be I'm not an advanced kid yet, and because I'll be a late bloomer and I'll develop potential later on, but in that case, I have to make sure that there are still ramps that are available for me. But all the research on tracking points to the unintended consequences that come from the early identification for both those students that are identified and those that are not identified. And it is the reason that schools are reluctant to create honors level tracks early. And that's really the point is, well, when do you heterogeneously group kids and when do you start to separate kids out? There are kids that show early progress in elementary school, right? We don't have an honors level 5th grade. We don't have an honors level 4th grade and advanced placement kindergarten, right? We don't have those because we see the value in heterogeneously grouping kids. So the question really just is, well, when? When is the point? So we're trying to deal with that by expanding and creating opportunities for kids to challenge themselves at later points, and earlier, I should say. That's the thought process behind the 9th grade AP seminar. It's the thought process behind exploring 9th grade AP human geography. And it's the thought process behind looking at Weber, looking at the core extension period, doing a study of that to determine are there other ways that core extension could be utilized to perhaps give kids some more enrichment opportunity and, in a deeper way.
It's interesting because I think that in some ways, when we talk about acceleration and enrichment, even though I think both are very important, in a way I often think we're almost starting the conversation at the wrong place. Because I think what you just said is sort of the core, which is like creating opportunities for students who need those opportunities. And I think when we hear from parents even about why don't you have acceleration, why don't you have enrichment, why don't you have this, what they really mean is this curriculum is not robust enough for my student. This curriculum is not challenging my student. And particularly with the word enrichment, it always feels a little bit to me like it's a vestige of us being stuck in an old model for education, right? Because like here on this list, we have project-based learning as enrichment, but project-based learning should be the standard because we understand the kind of education that's effective education for now, right? Like I'm sure, I don't even have to ask, I'm sure all of you who are administrators think project-based learning is really, really important. But you had to list it as enrichment because we understand it as like a supplement to the curriculum. And maybe if we created like a more perfect curricular program, we wouldn't even need to be having acceleration and enrichment conversation. Maybe a lot of this is really a differentiation conversation. Because, I'm looking at, there's a lot of weighted language in here, right? You were ready for us with like the tracking and the honors not being the only way to do it.
4 slides worth of.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But I think as I read all of, there's no single dominant model, this is less common, it's not the only way to do it. But I think what we're hearing from parents and what you're hearing from us is, but there has to be a way to do something, and parents are not seeing it. And I want to acknowledge though, as I said that like, there's been a lot of change in the last few years that is really positive and does create more opportunity. But like, that's really what it's about. And feeding into that, the question I was gonna next ask is, slide 22, you have, I think, really excellent reasons why there has to be a foundation year, right? Where there should be these common expectations and this shared experience. But ninth grade is children's 10th year in this district.
Right.
Why isn't that foundation in 6th grade or 7th grade or 8th grade?
Let me just step back,
Yeah,
right? I don't disagree with what you said,
I know.
right? So, but what you described, when parents are saying, this isn't challenging enough for my child, that means our enrichment model is not working. That doesn't mean enrichment isn't working, but the way we are implementing it, and we have to do a better job at that, and that's where the instructional practices come into play. And I appreciate you acknowledging changes, but yeah, we're not where we need to be. And I said that even before your question, that was part of the presentation. We're not where we need to be. The 20 schools, none of our comparable districts, none, have an acceleration in the humanities.
Great Neck doesn't?
None of our, let me double check that they responded. I think they responded to this. Great Neck did not, Garden City did, but of the ones that listed, that I listed on that slide, they don't have a acceleration for the humanities in the middle school.
So Great Neck did. I can't say that definitely they still do, but
Yeah.
I can say they did,
Okay. But
starting in 7th grade.
I
Yeah.
should have reached out to them individually, but I got those that responded, and we
I'm
got,
gonna text her.
we got
see
a
if
lot
she'll
of them.
respond to me.
Because you were probably in it.
so
I'm a math kid.
that said, what you are describing and what's been described is this need to do a better job reaching the full range of students, whether you call it enrichment, differentiated instruction, whatever it might be. That's what we need to do a better job with. Project-based learning is a component of what makes it's through you don't have to teach your entire class project-based learning, but when you incorporate those sort of units into it, yeah, that's where the enrichment can come in place, because this group can do something different than another group. So our enrichment needs to improve. I think we have paid a lot of attention to instructional practices in this district. We'll continue to pay attention to instructional practices. Ninth grade, that slide is there because there has been a strong push for a English 9 honors, Social Studies 9, a Global 9 honors, so on and so forth. And that's why the foundation starts at the elementary school. That's why we've spent so much time talking about instruction at the elementary school, about the curriculum materials and trying to align all that. Elementary is absolutely the foundation of everything that takes place. What's happening in the middle school is critical. So we're not looking to wait 10 years before we say, hey, this is now an important year. Not at all. But getting to the high school, that 9th grade year is a transitional year. It's a foundational year. They're all together. They're not in houses. And let's get as many shared experiences as possible in those 2 humanities courses.
Can I just say one? Looking at this just as a board member, not as a parent, not at my own experience, I feel that sometimes in all of our meetings, the district presents and you show us recommendations, next steps, everything, right? And one of the things that maybe why the default for myself, I can't speak for the other trustees, of just when are you adding, when are you adding a program, when are you adding an AP or an acceleration model in Weber, is because a lot of the presentations have next steps and have recommendations. And just looking at this one presentation, page 25, you list your next steps, but they're all AP based, right? So all of your recommendations from this one, you gave a lot of emphasis on we need to work on this, we need to work on this. But as a board, as far as tangibles for us, I think that's why my default is, well, what are you adding? When are you gonna ask me to add something budget-wise and show the data that it's important? Whereas right now I see, you know, I looked up from the last slides which courses will be added, but the AP seminar, like even here you list AP seminar, we're gonna, you know, we're looking into pathways, maybe the AP human geography, but nothing was like, okay, these are what we're doing with it. I know those discussions are really larger, and maybe it's a PD, you know, that's where the PD component is, and again, this is very like consolidated conversation, whereas I see from September with Dr. Posse and now together that you guys are going that route, like you are saying, we're working on this, we're looking into this, we're really trying to, you know, look into instruction. So I think that's where for me, like, it's just like a quick, well, what are you adding?
Or what's the goal?
Or
What's the goal
that's-
that makes an impact below the AP level?
Yeah, and for us, it's more of accountability, like, I've said data helps me with accountability, so if you say, you know, you're gonna work on it, and it's getting worked on, it's hard for me to understand.
What does that mean?
What does it mean and how to measure your own, the district's success on, you know,
Improving that.
getting it done. So that's where I'm trying to grapple, like, not bother you on when are you adding a humanities AP pathway. It's more of, if you're telling me it's through this enrichment and it's through better, maybe the differentiating within, or it's the instruction within and exposure, how do I make sure that that's, you know, something I see next year of.
Yeah, listen, I think that's a fair question, and I think that's a smart question, and I think that, you know, I know you referenced slide 25. I think prior to that on slide 24 is where we tried to talk about what we're looking to explore, and those are enrichment pieces that don't necessarily cost anything other than what
Great.
needs to be done from a PD point of view. You know, maybe these are not huge expenses, but you know, this is the path we've started on, and I think being a little more explicit as to, you know, here's what we've done, and, you know, we did this teaching, and in these classes, you know, these sort of common interdisciplinary units were put in place this year. That could be a sort of that feedback or the loop back that you were referencing. But yeah, I always include next steps, and I could have been a little more explicit perhaps on 24, but that's what we're looking to explore.
Thank you.
I'll leave it. Let me jump in.
Oh, okay. So for me, there's some disconnect in philosophy that maybe I'm just not hearing the way I should. So the description of sorting students, while removing gates to allow for more sorting, just doesn't, am I hearing a disconnect there? Is it?
I don't think I understand the question, I'm so sorry.
So, did I hear the conversation partly go to where the recommendation, best practice is to avoid sorting students? But then we're dropping gates so that students can self-sort
More concerned.
in the STEM.
The idea is to make sure that we're not locking students into tracks that are hard to change. So in other words, if you are not ready for accelerated math in 8th grade, we should, as a district, we're working to create additional on-ramps so that if you show readiness later on, you're able to jump back into that track. The way that it is currently, before the changes, is that if you're not selected for that track in 8th grade, it's very difficult for you if you demonstrate readiness later on. So in that way, we've locked students into tracks that are hard to change early. So that's what we were referring to, is that, you know, and again, in math and science, the difference is that you're accelerating to reach a different endpoint. So that acceleration becomes important because you're trying to reach AP Calculus, which you wouldn't be able to unless you accelerate at some point later on.
So that's my follow-up question to that, which is, there's a goal for STEM students. Does that mean we don't have higher goals for our humanities students?
Absolutely, we do. And those goals are embedded within what we value in terms of those common experiences, the in-depth discussions, shared experiences and history through those courses. So absolutely. You are right. We are breaking down sort of barriers to allow kids. Dr. Posse mentioned what's happening at the middle school in terms of trying to allow more kids access to the math pathway. Most of when we talk about breaking down barriers, it references the AP classes. I have far less of a problem once you get into 10th grade. Let kids choose their honors, their AP, let them select. Let's make sure, however, we have provided a strong enough common foundation through what I believe 9th grade, especially in those humanities courses. So they've got the reading, the writing, the critical analysis, and the research skills, so they can be successful no matter what pathway they have. We want all students to have that. So I don't really see that as a dichotomy in terms of, well, you're breaking down barriers, but you're not allowing kids to break down to have acceleration in the middle school. Our belief is that we value those common experiences in those humanities courses where all of our kids are together, and we have instructional practices that will support the kids who are struggling while also challenging those who can fly. And that piece, those instructional practices, that's what we need to work on and continue to work on. Make sure the practices are in place and we've got a curriculum in place at all levels that challenges the students. So I don't really see a conflict between those two.
The difference is for math and science, you're trying to reach a course that you couldn't reach if we didn't accelerate. In other words, you can't reach AP Calculus unless you take a combined course somewhere along the way. In humanities, in English, for example, the capstone course is English literature. You can reach that course without skipping a grade level or taking a combined course, which is why the emphasis should be on deepening the experience for students in that pathway earlier on. But there's no course above AP literature that a school can offer. And same for social studies. For social studies, the capstone course.
I challenge our teachers, and I believe that they could teach our students all kinds of amazing things.
Oh, of course. In terms of an accepted practice, though, across
That a private organization is running our schools. Yes, don't get me started.
It's interesting because I think that it is not that you're not understanding, it's that you're not, right, you're having a fundamental problem, like a philosophical difference, and I think it's two ways of measuring what you need to get to, right? And like, I see what you're saying, that math, there's courses you won't have access to, and I think where Nana's coming from and where I agree is even if it's not measurable, in the humanities, there is a place further you can get if you start earlier. And just to clarify though, I think like where I'm coming from is I'm on board for the idea that it doesn't necessarily mean that it's honors earlier. And in fact, I'd rather have it be meaningful than have it have a certain label. And certainly in the middle school, right, I think even though my middle school honors English classes were fantastic, I think there's a really, there's an argument I understand there about not labeling kids when it isn't necessary to provide what that extra would be providing. And I don't want the label for the label, right? And middle school especially, it gets them nothing.
Yeah.
But I think there's an opportunity cost to not having more challenging opportunities in the English and the social studies earlier. But I kind of think we should have that conversation from there rather than debating the honors versus not honors, because I don't think the label is the important part, right? The label is the least of it. It's what does the class look like? And so we've talked a little bit in public about the 10th grade English honors class, and I know that you and our high school administration, because I've heard from parents, have gotten both good feedback and feedback from parents who are upset about how hard it is. And to me, the problem is it's so hard, but it wasn't so hard before, so it's surprising. And when I think about my middle school English honors experience, the part that's important is not that I was in an honors class. The part that's important is not that I was classified and the other people were classified. The point is that it was difficult, right? It was challenging. We read a lot of books. Some of them were very long. We had a certain kind of expectation about the amount of writing that we were supposed to produce and the type of writing that we were supposed to produce. And I think that if we don't create the opportunities for that rigor earlier, for all students really, something gets lost, right? Because if you have a student who has a talent and it's not fostered, it can wither. And if you have a student who would read a lot but isn't expected to, I think especially in this day and age where they all have a phone, they all have a computer, it's very easy to not read.
For sure.
If you're not pushing them to read, like we are changing where they're getting to, it's just not in the same measurable way as it is in the science and the math track.
I want to just go back to that honors 10th grade English course. There's nothing to compare it to. It didn't exist before, so they can't say this is harder than it used to be. It's a brand new course, and I think it is illustrative of when the honors projects were removed from 9th and 10th grade humanities courses. Our argument was, yeah, that only becomes a label. It was not really an honors course. They were doing this extra thing, often by XYZ, whether it's a tutor, whether it's Google, and it was not. This is truly a different course than English 10.
Right.
And it is more challenging, right? But as we brought in English 10, an important part was to rethink our English 9 course as well, so that that shared experience would allow more students access, those who wanted to. If you were into English, you could take and be ready for that English 10H course. So I think 10th grade, when you start focusing on whether it's honors and you go off on an AP route, I don't have a problem with that. I don't see that as sorting or labeling. I see that as students are getting to the point where they really know what their interests are. But we want to make sure that 9th grade course may turn in, may create a reader out of students who was not really into English for whatever reason, and they have those common experiences. So, that depth of instruction is important, and I think where we need to make sure we're doing a good job, and what we've heard is we're not there yet, because if we have all these students feeling that they're not challenged in their course, we're not there yet. But the answer is not, we need an honors track. The answer, which I think you alluded to, is better instructional approach. So we do meet the needs of all of the kids, both those who are struggling, as well as those who can fly off and fly a little harder.
And I actually don't even think it's just, like, an acceleration and enrichment conversation should, I don't think it is for you, but I mean, just to put it out there, like, we're not talking about that, like, one little top layer. I think when we're talking about acceleration and enrichment, like, look at the numbers in math and science, like, we're talking about a huge chunk of our students.
Correct.
And in some ways, like, for the humanities, it might even be a bigger chunk we're talking about, right? Like, because you don't have to have the same foundation, you know, whatever reason, like, this isn't just making sure the tippy top couple percentage points have something. I think all our students could benefit from reading more and from writing more. And I think we have some really excellent humanities teachers at Weber. But we need more consistency in terms of what it looks like. And I think also when you have a heterogeneous class, sometimes it's easy to slide into just teaching to the middle or even the bottom middle instead of having more of what Dr. Baer has called the productive struggle encouraged, right? Maybe you have to read something that does seem like a hard book. Maybe you can't finish all your reading if you leave it for one day, you know?
And that's where the instructional approach and the practices, whether it's scaffolding, modification, whatever might be appropriate, that's what we have to work on as well with all of our staff. And as you've said, some do it and they do it naturally and they do it quite well. Others, you know, we need to work on those skills so that we can reach all students. We want all of our students to be prepared, to have common experiences, and to be able to challenge themselves upward, whether it's in the humanities, whether it's in math, science, the STEM area, or even art.
So,
I'm sorry, Rachel, Great Neck does it during lunchtime, it's not their English class. So it's a self-selected program during lunch, and they run for short time frames
In middle school?
in middle school. They run,
Great Neck's doesn't have an honors in the middle school.
they do like some sort of choice program, selected program. I literally through a text message. I don't have much information, but it's, they do it during lunchtime. It's 2 or 3 or 4 times of their lunch where they meet with someone, they do an assignment of some sort, and it's self-selected. So they don't have it, everyone's in regular English classes.
So I, of course, would be remiss if I did not say that I believe the entire board, this committee is watching the work in instruction and instructional shifts and all of the work that has gone into real change in the district. And all of that is good for every student in front of every educator. So that is absolutely happening, and it will benefit everyone. I want to make a shift, however, to the K-3 piece of our student experience, because at that moment, we don't have students that are in core group yet. And that's a whole sorting conversation that I'm not even going to touch. Because those students have real academic needs that are being met by PEP. But I just want to point out this K-3 time period for many of our students can be problematic, a struggle, and can that be some of your attention going forward for how those students' needs can be better met in the whole classroom model? Am I confusing them?
No, I don't think you're confusing me. I just want to make sure I understand the question. So what I'm hearing is, although the K-3 kids do have that enrichment through the PEP program, as do all of them do, there's a group of those who, if you will, pre-PEP kids that you feel need more than what's provided with our current enrichment model. Okay.
Yes.
I'll just add to that, as far as K-5, we have invested a lot in the new math program, and right now it's the only thing that I can speak of because it's the only consistent thing across the district as far as curriculum for the lower level, for the elementary. And one of the biggest things that I heard as a board member is how amazing iReady can scaffold and differentiate. And I think that maybe at some point, an update for us just to see if that part of iReady is working and being used. And I don't know how you explain that to us aside from like telling us yes, the teachers are doing differentiating and using the scaffolding. But I will say that I understand that it's, why do I feel like I'm helping make an argument for instructional coaches? But, you know, using the program to fidelity, right, I think has been like one of the discussions because there's been a huge investment in it and there's an ongoing investment with PD and an ongoing time investment by your department into that. And, you know, the presentation in the fall was really important and great to see the data. And I think that that's maybe that's one of the programs, right? Like that is the program that we're discussing as it pertains to math, that it's supposed to help this scaffold, this differentiating, if used correctly. Go for it.
No, you're right on target, and I appreciate you, I guess I brought up scaffolding, but I appreciate you bringing it up because, you know, year one of the iReady implementation was really about, holy cow, this is a brand new program asking me to do a whole new instructional approach. My head's gonna explode. And as I've said, the teachers did an incredible job. I thought what our K-6 teachers did in terms of implementing iReady was amazing. The second year, everyone's a little calmer coming into the classrooms because they've used it, and it's really been about exploring iReady, using those resources for the scaffolding, for the small group instruction, which we've discussed. This is not work that's going to take place only in 1 year either. This has got to continue because it has a lot of resources. We'll continue to review and expand the use of resources next year. And that's where sort of that on-demand PD in the form of a instructional coach can be really helpful. So you're absolutely right. And you're also speaking to the benefit of a common instructional curriculum program. You're talking mathematics, we're looking for literacy as well. That does bring in all those other resources that would be very challenging for us to have on our own, and to have those as consistent practices. It's really important for our kids. We hear it already with mathematics. You speak to, you know, a grade 4 teacher, for example, the kids are coming in, just having that year before with iReady, it's made a huge difference in the language being used in their mathematics classroom. We've spoken about the K2 piece with phonics phonemic awareness, and we've had some buildings that have had that in place for a few years. You speak to those third grade teachers, the difference in the kids when you have that consistent approach and you know, curriculum is incredible. So there's tremendous value. Kids, you can't have them like ping pong balls having different instructional approaches. That's why the curriculum consistency is really important. There are a lot of wonderful curriculum packages out there. Get on board, have one that's consistent so that kids have similar experiences. And that's what's going to enrich their learning and get them further ahead. I know it takes time, and we're not waiting for what we're doing at the elementary level to sort of bubble up and you know, check back in about 6 years, and then we'll talk about the middle school. But we've got to tackle all. But the differences we're doing at the elementary school are fundamental, and they're monumental, and it's going to really have a payoff in the years ahead for our kids. And when we get this literacy piece in place, it's going to be huge.
It's very late, and I know we have community here that I'm certain would like to participate, so if it's okay with you, I will pass it on to them. Forgive, what?
No.
Right?
I have so many things I would like to say and not enough time to say them, and I'm sure that other people, I appreciate this conversation, and I guess I'll focus on the middle school piece for a second. So, and I agree with what Rachel's saying, it's not about the AP and the honors, and I think if you have enough enrichment, you don't need the acceleration. It's just that the curriculum in the middle school is not meeting the needs of the kids who want to advance in the humanities. And so there feels to me like an opportunity, and I know you've heard me say this 1,000 times, so I'll say it for the public record as opposed to for you, but in the core extension with project-based programs like a National History Day or an Odyssey of the Mind or writing competitions, of which there are many, where kids could enrich themselves or have a more enriching experience. And all kids could have access to it, and you don't have to do it after school, and you don't have to do it as part of a club, but it's happening in the school day. You get to, in my experience, you get to 10H and you're like, thank God, this is what we've been waiting for. And the conversations and the reading, it's so wonderful and robust and fantastic. But I think I have a philosophical opposition to not having that sooner. These kids have been waiting for it for so long. They want to have those conversations in 6th and 7th grade. Why are we waiting until 10th? And the idea that we need to have a heterogeneous classroom in 9th grade, still, I just think philosophically, I guess I just don't agree. But again, that's my plug for, my 7th grader is watching Hunger Games in core extension this week. Now maybe I have no problem with using film as a means for teaching, but I don't see what the connection is. So I just think core extension really could be an opportunity, to do more interesting and robust things.
Excellent, thank you.
So I think that in a similar vein, I now have a 6th grader. And I think elementary school differentiated better in terms of pulling humanities so that everybody did have to work and had to work up to their level. This year, he's barely doing anything, and he's gotten 100% on every single English and social studies assignment. And what he's learned is I can do it the morning of. What he's learned is I don't have to read. He chose for his independent reading and write long to read Lord of the Rings. And because it's structured to be over such a long period with no interaction, instead of him reading that in 3 weeks, he's only in book 2. So he's learned to not do work. And he's learned it doesn't matter what I do, I'm gonna get 100%. Which what he's going to learn, if he ultimately chooses to take an honors class, is, oh crap, I've now missed the period where my brain was developing to learn the executive functioning skills. Because he doesn't need to learn them, because he is bored out of his mind. And you know what he does? He doesn't participate and bring the class up. He doesn't say anything because his classmates are not at a point where they're gonna have the same conversation. Excuse me. So unfortunately, it's hurting him. It's not that he's just not growing or excelling. I've watched my child who devoured books not read for months. And that, I think, is a mental health problem. I think we're looking at it, yes, there needs to be acceleration. I understand that the supposedly research supports heterogeneous groups, but I don't think that the instruction fully works. And maybe there are teachers who do it. Unfortunately, he's in Yellow House. It's not happening. He, especially now with maternity leave, he is fed up with the class. And he's just checked out. So that's the side that I haven't heard talked about. My kid's never choosing honors on his own. He does not want to do schoolwork. But instead, what I have is a child who is taught that he doesn't have to do anything and he'll get 100%. So that's the other side of this story where you're not differentiating. I don't need acceleration. I don't need an honors class in middle school for him. But I do need him to be expected to do something and to learn something.
Can I ask if, and I really appreciate you sharing that, and I think that's such an important perspective, and it does speak to the need for better instructional practices. Have you spoken to the teacher about your concerns regarding your child not being challenged?
I haven't spoken recently to them. I can reach out to them.
I think that's just such a powerful message, and it's important, I think, for the teacher to hear that and have that conversation, because I don't know any teacher that would be happy to hear that one of the kids is getting turned off by reading and is learning that I can sort of wait till the morning of to do it. I think this would be an important conversation, not in an accusatory way, but here are my observations. I think how you presented it right now was just so incredibly respectful and matter of fact. I think the teacher needs to hear that.
Yeah, I can definitely reach out to them. Unfortunately, he's being labeled as a problem child because he's bored.
Yeah.
And so he'll finish what he's doing or be done with it and then doodle or read on his own.
No, I understand.
And that, so that's been more of the conversation.
Okay.
This is my life.
I'm just gonna build off of more of what Liz said, in terms of the heterogeneous model in ninth grade. I think that the slides sort of started out with the conversation of acceleration is what doesn't really work in ninth grade, or we're not looking for acceleration in the humanities, we don't need it because there's sort of no track. And I think what I understand from the community concern is not necessarily that we need an accelerated 9 English class, but we just need maybe a more robust 9 English class. And so it doesn't have to be I appreciate that we're adding the seminar for ninth graders, and I think that will be a great pathway for someone that's looking for more. But the humanities don't need to be accelerated. Like, for example, biology in ninth grade, all the ninth graders take biology, but there isn't an honors biology class. That's not really an accelerated class. Maybe they cover more of the material, but they're still covering biology, which all ninth graders are taking. So it's sort of a similar, it's really more analogous to like a 9H English would be like honors bio. And so the STEM kids are getting that opportunity to take a subject that all ninth graders are taking, but delve into it a little bit deeper. We're not giving the humanities kids, we're not giving the English kids and the social studies kids that opportunity in the humanities. So I think it's not necessarily that we're looking for, the community is looking for an accelerated 9 or a higher level AP 9, but they're just looking for a more robust 9.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Okay. I want to echo that my children, I have 2 in Port schools and 1 in preschool. 1 is in 7th grade, 1 is in 4th grade. My 7th grader has almost the same experience as the woman down here. She's got almost 100 average in all of her classes, and she has a behavioral issue. Javelin knows all about her because we have constant meetings. She has actually come home crying recently that she doesn't learn anything when she is in school. Actually, I told her, and the reason I'm here is because my kids want to know what they're learning. I'm bringing this home for them. I told her to write a note to Dr. Patsy, so he'll be getting a letter from her because she is so frustrated. And on her latest progress report, there's a comment from her science teacher that she's a behavioral problem in science class. So I asked her, what is this about? She goes, oh, he doesn't like when I ask questions. She asks too many questions. And I'm sure her questions are very annoying, but she wants to learn. And she feels that she is not learning. And just, this presentation is fascinating, but it seems theoretical. It doesn't seem to really reflect what's actually happening on the ground. Like, she's in 7th grade English, and they are now reading the first book for the year. The first book, and it's wonderful they did a thing about Poe, and they read some short stories and poems, but I don't understand how a 7th grader is in an English class where they haven't even read a single book this year. So I don't think she's written an essay yet this year. Actually, she wrote one paragraph. There was a paragraph that they had to write, and she was like, I'm waiting for my grade, because that was the first writing assignment that she had done this year. And it's important because she has dysgraphia, and so she needs the feedback about her writing. And the feedback was, you didn't indent. She's like, well, they didn't tell me to indent. Why are we getting to the point it's January and she's learning that she needs to indent? That should have happened in October, that she should have been getting this feedback, because when she gets the feedback, she's motivated by the grades and she will learn. So that's, and one more comment on middle school, and then I just want to address elementary school. It's lovely that we have all this enrichment, but it puts all of the onus on the children to do these things. Why is this child-based? My child is at school at 7 o'clock almost every morning to go to these clubs, and then she stays until 4:15 to go to more clubs. But unless you have a really motivated kid who wants to do these things, there's no easy way for them to get the enrichment. The enrichment it's not built into the system. I don't know, I went to a school where we had 7th grade honors classes, and it kind of blew my mind when I found out we didn't have that here. I don't really understand this, even after listening to all of this. And my 4th grader, I mean, we didn't really talk very much about elementary school here, but he is a math kid, and he hates school now. And I've had meetings with Dr. Sheehan and with his teachers. I don't understand, iReady seems fine, I guess, but the stuff he learns in iReady is different than the stuff that he learns in the class because he's so ahead of what the class is learning. And then he still has to sit there for half an hour every day and pretend to learn things with his class. So they're doing fraction equivalence, which is 1/2 is equal to 2/4. And he's doing like 8th or 9th grade math or whatever. It doesn't go past 8th grade. So he's doing 8th grade math on iReady. And I was like, well, what do you do while your class is sitting there? He goes, oh, I like do math on a notebook. I just do my work fast. And then I sit there and I do long division on my notebook because that's something that entertains him. So there's like a serious disconnect between the theory that you're showing us on these slides and what's actually happening in the classroom. And well, in theory, I guess this is fine. It seems really defensive, by the way. I don't understand why you're saying the district is open to exploring, like this is a mediation or something. Like, aren't we all supposed to work together? I don't understand how you're open to exploring ideas. And this isn't just like a conversation about what we're doing, but this is theoretical versus what's actually happening. And I don't really see very much of what's on this slide in reality.
Yeah, first, I want to thank all the parents that spoke. Sort of bring sometimes memories of the very long distance past. Ms. Gillian mentioned something very important, which is the culture has to change. Talk about the humanities. That's what I have spoken about directors, my mantra. You need someone, you need a maestro who conducts K through 12. English and social studies are intertwined. Critical thinking. Two different approaches, but they are intertwined. The same thing about, I mentioned before about math and science. Math drives science. Science comes along with math. But something that people don't seem to realize is that good science kids and good math kids are good writers. They appreciate the humanities, they appreciate the writing and the exploration of the arts and other things, like music in the case of my kid. But so they shouldn't be two separate things. They should be combined. But you need, as I said before, since, I don't know, 50 years ago when I was here, you need a maestro, you need a conductor. Now, the superintendent, I think Dr. Pazzi has been very great and very appreciative that he's here, as well as the other administrators, including Dr. Finney. But you need someone who is a troubleshooter in the schools, who is not centered in the school, but centered in the central offices, who a parent who has a problem can call and say, Mr. Director or Mrs. Director, I am having, like this lady, a problem with my child, and I don't know really whether maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right. What do you say? It is the role of that director not to say, well, you're wrong. Let me find out. I mean, that's what I would do as a director. Let me go to the teacher. Let me talk to the superintendent, not to the assistant superintendent, and find out what is going on. Because the first thing in order to solve a problem is to find out what is the problem and how can it be solved. And I finish by saying this, and Dr. Finney alluded to it, instruction. I think some of you have received I forget his name right now, famous administrator from Manhasset High Schools a long time ago, who wrote the book on the importance of curriculum in the school district. Instruction, instruction, instruction. It drives. You can have all the most beautiful curriculum in the world. If the instruction is not aligned with the curriculum and delivered in a way that stimulates and brings the curiosity and the desire to learn, and that is that how to deliver good instruction is I've been in other conversations with political undertones and all that. But my advice is that the board have a self-reflection session with the administrators and say, what can we do about instruction, about delivering the best instruction? Because you do have wonderful teachers here. I will tell you that. You have some wonderful teachers who are in the wilderness. They need to be brought back into the road to great success. And a lot of them do. A lot of them really try very hard and they innovate. But you need, again, I bring my example of an orchestra. You could be the greatest violin player without the management of the conductor. You might not be as good.
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I think kind of echoing a lot of what everybody has said, I think the idea of the heterogeneous classroom in theory is lovely, everybody kind of working together and building each other up, but I think it's not happening in practice here, and I have those kids who did ask for more work, and I asked teachers for more work in elementary school, where it does, I think, I agree, work a bit better, but in middle school, certainly, and in 9th grade, and my kid was told, you know, everybody reads the same book, I can't change the book if some people can't keep up with it, so this is what we're stuck with. And then kids who get in trouble for reading ahead because the pace is really slow and they want to know what happens next. And a 9th grade class where they read one book to completion for the entire year and everything else is pieces of books, or you get this section and this group gets that section. And I also wonder if kind of removing the 9th grade honors project, like regardless of the honors label on it, is that not kind of speaking to how this doesn't really work in our heterogeneous classrooms, that like it's in practice, the teachers aren't able to handle a kind of enrichment group and a more grade level group, at least at the moment. And while I'm fine with that not being there, like what is there then for these students while we figure out what the next steps are? And yeah, and I know I feel like acceleration becomes like a bit of a dirty word, but if we offer that to our students, there are so many wonderful kind of selectives in the English department that we have now that those kids who are on the AP track don't have the opportunity to take. And we talked, there's the class on like utopia and dystopia, all these interesting things that they can't fit into their schedules if they have those AP courses, and then they have to make a choice when they might really benefit from having both.
Did you?
No, I was just throwing out this suggestion. I know the kids take AP World History in 10th grade, and a lot of kids take it. Some school districts, what they've done is in 9th grade, there's Global 9, but the College Board also offers pre-AP World History. The only reason I mention that is not because I'm throwing in another AP and to have another AP for the transcript, but I think it could be helpful because, and it could increase, for the kids who do take AP World History in 10th grade, it could in the end increase AP scores, because by doing the pre-AP, the 9th grade teacher is teaching Global 9 and introducing the DPQs, the FRQs earlier, and they're doing the essay work that they don't really do in 9th grade. So it would give them an early start with more writing, so it's something I thought, to look in, because I do think schools that might have the pre-AP World History in 9th grade might have better scores in AP World History in the end. And the kids who then you could also then open it up to more kids might want to try AP World, and they could have more success because they've had this background, especially with the writing and the analysis, they start a lot earlier. Because Global 9, depending on the teacher you have, sometimes, you don't do as much writing, but this having, what really helps is when you have a curriculum. That's why I am for AP courses because I do find that generally when some teachers teach electives and there's no actual curriculum, it's very, some are hardworking teachers, but some are not. And that's the problem, for example, I have with core extension. Core extension is just too vague. You have to have a name of a course. It could be anything from a mock trial course, and then the kids choose what they're interested in, because as opposed to this vague core extension, and then when you go online and you look at the description, it doesn't say anything. It's just too vague. And the teachers could create lessons. You could divide up teachers, and they could actually have courses, and then the kids could actually choose which electives they want, as opposed to being put in core extension where there's vague and you actually have electives from podcasting, fun electives, not that they have to go home and do homework, but you need titles. And I think it's a problem when you go into when you go look at the list of courses that you offer and you have something like core extension, for me, that's a red flag, where it's just this vague description. And we have that in the high school. We have intro, I don't know if they're still there, but intro to STEM. It's way too vague. It doesn't mean anything. And as a result, sometimes that's the experience the kids are having in the class. So you, as a board, I think you have to require that. You have to really look at that and require. And the same thing, like you have to be able to say, okay, 6th grade English, I want to see the curriculum. I don't want to see a description. I want to see an actual curriculum. What are the books that are being taught? When my son was in 6th grade, he didn't get his first book until February or January, I think it was. And that was lucky because then we went into lockdown, so we happened to have a book that the teacher could use. But we were doing, antonyms and synonym worksheets for a good 4 months. And that wasn't all, other teachers were working, so I can't, it's just, but there's no curriculum, you have to have that. And I think as a board, you need to request that. I think core extension really needs a subject title and a description.
Thank you, Rose.
And intro to STEM and look into pre-AP world. It could benefit your kids.
You brought up this twice. So in my previous district, when we used to offer in 10th grade AP Euro, when we switched to AP World, we brought it in as you described. It was a huge curriculum, right? They covered 2 millennia worth, and we had a sort of honors section in 9th grade, and then we had the AP section. What we found over a number of years is we were not really seeing many students who were able to go from sort of the non-honors 9th grade to the AP course. And for us, having those ramps was really important. When the AP...
Because it was a requirement? They weren't moving on to the next...
So it used to be a 2-year course.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it was a requirement.
Right, it was never technically a 2-year, but it was such a vast curriculum. A lot of districts did exactly as you described. When they chopped it in half and they cut the course in half, we used that as an opportunity to get rid of our 9H altogether. The rationale being we should really focus on better instruction for all 9th graders. All of the DBQ, so on and so forth. And what we saw was more students than being able to take the AP in 10th grade, and our scores, which were already phenomenal, continue to either be stable or increase. So it's about the instruction, which is what Mr. Borda said earlier. Instruction is critical, but having a common curriculum so across all sections, teacher X, teacher Y, teacher Z, teaching the same way, teaching the same material, which helps, when you've got to get into the AP, but the instruction is important. So, that model isn't, what we saw, it was not necessary, and we're able to get rid of the honors in the 9th grade and have it as a heterogeneous global course.
Jessica?
I just had 2 questions, clarifying ones. You mentioned the dual enrollment classes as a potential acceleration or enrichment. And I don't often hear, I don't know that much about those. And I guess I was just wondering, really just like logistically how it works and, are you sitting in a high school class? Are you taking classes online in college? And would you have, and just related, do you have an estimate, like how many classes is that offered?
Well, I think I put the number there, I thought we
Okay.
had 31. We have spoken and we've expanded in some of the presentations, but some of these presentations we've given have been so dense that I can understand if dual enrollment got lost a little bit, but we've certainly expanded it over the last 3-4 years. Students will register for the school. It's a reduced tuition fee, so anywhere from a third to maybe a half of what typical tuition might cost. The teacher, that high school teacher, theoretically becomes an adjunct for that college, and you can form partnerships. So we have partnerships with different local ones, whether it's LIU, whether it's St. John's, we have some. The kids don't have to travel anywhere. They take their regular class, but it's like that class and the curriculum has been endorsed by that school.
I see, so you're getting the college credit, but you're
Correct.
still just taking your class entirely.
But the course curriculum had to get submitted and approved to the college. I will say New York is one of 2 states in the country that doesn't have a more formal process statewide where this stuff has to get approved, but that's the direction we're moving in. I think New York and Pennsylvania are 2 states where it's, I don't want to say the wild, wild west, but it's not as consistent. Other states have, you've got to get them approved through the state as well as the local university.
Yeah, I think that's great. I do, now that we're having this talk, remember it being offered like in a world language course, but I think it's, something that maybe at the guidance level, can be pushed out a little bit more, because it seems like, a good opportunity. I think people talk about, getting the AP, getting a good score on the AP test to accumulate college credits, but this is kind of much easier and direct. And I don't know, do you find how many people aren't taking advantage of it?
I don't have the number. We have a decent number. I know the number has increased, but I don't know the enrollment offhand.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about the dual enrollment is, as of now, but it's arriving, but like in the business department, those can be, they don't have AP business courses, although they are bringing one out next year. But up to now, there had been none. So for students who want a little more challenging and want that sort of, college stamp, business was one area where they were typically very popular.
And then my other question is for the AP seminar class, is that a class that is being is the view that it's going to be mostly 9th graders? Is it like, if you're an 8th grader now at Weber and you're thinking about your schedule, what kind of student, are teachers recommending kids to be put into AP seminar if they're doing well in their English and social studies classes? How is this being envisioned as
AP seminars, I think I mentioned. I don't know other schools that are offering it for 9th graders. It's typically a 10 through 12. It's helpful to have, when you go into that class, some experience with advanced coursework. It just helps make the research a little more meaningful. So I would not say that, all 9th graders should be enrolled in it, but I think for those who, want that sort of challenge and have room in their schedules, I think it's a good offering. I can't speak to exactly how the language being used at the middle school at this point. I can try to find out.
I'm sorry.
I would love to. So 2 things. Dual enrollment, as far as the participation in the class, is different than the number of students who would be taking it for college credit. So that's an option. You don't have to pay for the college in order to be enrolled in the class. That's entirely a student and a family decision, because it's based on the college granting the credit, and if you, for whatever reason, don't want that, you just want the experience, you do that separate. It's 2 separate numbers. The other thing is for AP seminar, it is an elective offering, so it's not something that a teacher would recommend and say, Katie Bear, you need to go into AP seminar. However, when we did have our teachers and chair people go to the middle school, was that last week? This week? Last week. Since the beginning of this calendar year, our teachers and chair people have gone down to the middle school over a number of days to talk to the students about different elective opportunities, including Ms. Mills, who's our English chairperson, who went and spoke with the students specifically about AP seminar to say, these are the types of things that you can really expect. As opposed to our other English courses, it's not specifically a literature-based course. There are other writing and presentation skills that are involved, including the end of the year. This is one of the AP exams that's not just a sit down and take a test. There's a collaborative presentation that's involved. So she went over what the specifics are, what students can really expect, the type of student who is really interested in the humanities would be interested in this type of elective, so that the students really heard directly from her what the overview of the course was.
Received quite favorably, but will the upperclassmen be given preference if it's too popular of a class?
Yeah, we've got to see what the enrollment numbers are, right? Because it may necessitate additional staffing depending on the enrollment number. So there's some budgetary implications. We certainly want to support it. And certainly I would say the preference would go initially to some of the older kids.
Which is how it works as a high school. If you have seniors looking to take a class, and this rising seniors, and this is their last opportunity to do so, that's where the preference would be. When you're putting those puzzle pieces together for the master schedule, there's so many things at play that we see where it would actually fit the number of sections we need. And as Dr. Feeney said, obviously, every school is limited by the number of available teachers to teach a course, as well as classrooms. We can't have more classes than teachers in classrooms.
Are you serious? Okay.
I have just two things. On the one hand, for elementary school, I think that iReady can differentiate. Juanita Diaz has accelerated, my students in a way that has been fantastic. But I had to find you to then accelerate my students. So the teachers didn't understand or know exactly how to do that. I wonder if that could be part of the conceptual plan for elementary school, because when I said, I spoke to them and my students accelerated, other people were like, that would be perfect for my child. They are so frustrated with their, so I wonder if that could be included.
Can I interject?
And I want to add after.
I'm sorry.
So it was related to my path, just to draw.
Related for my path.
So the thing about, and we discussed this, the thing about the movement of my path, it has to be in conjunction with all of the pieces that speak to, because like for my path, it is based on the student's diagnostic.
Correct.
So if a student, which happens, right, on any test, if a student doesn't put their full force and effort in, it could show different gaps. So when those gaps don't actually exist, we look at different data points to move the child along. But like I explained to you and other parents who requested it, when we do move them, they lose the opportunity of whatever gets skipped. So we want to make sure that it's accurate, that we're not, just moving. So that is part of the reason why we have to look at different data points to ensure that we're not just
I don't think that it needs to be an overall enrichment, but it went from, I'm going to drive I'm not going to do this, I'm going to throw my computer on the floor, to I will do an hour of iReady, even though I don't have to, because I have a very, very mathy kid. So I think that's parents being aware of that would be very helpful. However, it then raises a problem later on, because now these kids have taught themselves, or at home with us, taught themselves the curriculum. And while we are stressing you're learning the strategies, you're learning to check your work, you're learning to work closely and neatly and do the assignment, we're creating a set of students who are now mismatched for their in-class curriculum. And this is going to get worse. Better for them because the child is accelerated on their own, but more mismatched in the classroom. And then you have those kids become the behavior problems, or you have those kids become the kids who are supposed to be helping the other students or assisting the other students, which for some kids is fantastic and builds their self-esteem. For some kids, it's really bad interaction behaviors. So I'm wondering how the district is planning on addressing that as we move forward. And I don't think that's an answer we have right now, but we are building a set of kids who in second grade are doing post-elementary school math. What are we gonna do with them? So that would be my question, is how we're moving forward with them.
On the one hand, I love iReady because she can learn how to do fractions instead of adding and subtracting 2-digit numbers. But what are we gonna do later on? So that would be my request for
That's a good point, thank you.
planning.
It is noon. We've done it again, everybody. Congrats to us. We're at the 2-hour mark. Rachel has one more thing to say, but I just wanted to please inform the community that our next meeting is Friday, February 13th at 10 a.m. here, and we will be discussing climate survey results. Rachel.
I just wanted to bring it back to the sort of the framing issue is, you know, one of the things you learn when you're teaching creativity to children is the way you pose the problem, the way you phrase the question, can influence the answer to the question. And so posing a problem for a child to solve in the most open-ended way allows for the most creativity. And I think that's a little bit of the issue in front of us today. And I'm not faulting anybody because we asked for an acceleration and enrichment update. But I think to me, the most salient important point that we're hearing thematically from our community, and I think have heard from the community for years, is the concern that children are not being challenged as much as they should be or as much as they could be. And so for all of our minds, I think when we're discussing and thinking about this going forward, instead of asking ourselves, well, what are our acceleration and enrichment options, we should be asking ourselves, are we challenging every student to the utmost of their ability? Because that allows us to not get caught in this, should it be an H, should it not be an H, when that's not really the important part, right? I think the important part is this, our children being challenged, which also, thank you for bringing up the point, is important because it teaches other things, right? It's their work ethic going forward. It's understanding that you do have to work hard, which I think also impacts their stress level later because they can learn to work at a time when the stakes are lower. And I think if you have hit a point where you're just, like your brain has hibernated because you could get away with it, and then suddenly your course load gets harder, that's a stress level problem. And they should be able to be challenged and have that not be stressful, have it be an okay thing. I think it's also a pretty common phenomenon for a child who hasn't been forced to work hard to then think, oh, I'm not good at that, right? I'm not gonna do that, when every adult and every educator knows that just because you're not good at something from the outset doesn't mean that you won't be good at it and doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. So there are all these extra side effects, I think, that are important for long-term success for students that happen when we're not challenging them enough. And I think, again, this is not 1%, 2%. This is like a lot of our students, because I think it's the students in the middle, and also students are complicated. So you could have a student who needs to be challenged extensively in one topic area. Maybe they don't excel in this other area, and that's okay, right? And that should be normal as well.
Perfect way to finish. Thank you. I apologize it's long again. Always so many important things and perspectives to hear that help our district grow. So thank you again.
Thank you.